Welcome everyone to Nightcap Candid Cafe Conversations with Friends. And today I have a new friend, a very wonderful, very fantastic being of just wonderful, just so much. It's all good. It's all so good. I have such good feelings. This is Jess, aka go GG on the internets. Hello.
Hello.
Friends.
Hi. I love hearing how people say my name, because my name is just a series of letters and people never know which ones to pronounce as a whole and which ones to pronounce as like letters. So some people are like G-O-G-G, Go-G, Go-G-Berries, Go, yeah. I love it.
I have been this is kind of a strange, surreal thing for me because I don't fan over people a lot, but I have been watching your streams for a very long time, and it feels very odd to be in the same immediate moment of conversation. So thank you for being here, you wonderful person.
Thank you. That's wild for me to hear that someone views and considers me a person who does stuff.
You're a person who does stuff.
I know.
Yes.
I do a lot of stuff, but I imagine it's mostly imperceptible. Like it's it's mostly inconceivable. Like,
but some of it is very conceivable. Like you stream a little bit less than you used to, is that right?
I'm taking a bit of October was the month where I was like, is October a good time to take a rest?
It's a good time. But you stream a whole ton of stuff. You stream mostly video games at this ish time of recording, at least. Lots of adorable indie games, and also you're still doing Destiny sometimes? Yeah,
sometimes. We've started doing Final Fantasy, and that is because, yeah, like you said, I do a lot of indie games because I've been lucky enough to be shouting about loudly enough, apparently, about how much I love indie games that sometimes indie devs are like, hey, here's an indie game key. I'm like, sweet, indie game. And then I, for the past 2-3 years, I have regularly played with my best friend Dustin, which has been Destiny, and my wifey Slayer, which has been like Borderlands and stuff similar to that. But we did take a little Destiny break to try Final Fantasy Online because I'm not an MMO person, or at least I was not.
Oh, okay. Is Final Fantasy the thing that tipped the scale, or is it just kind of like feeling out the waters, or?
I like it. I like it more so than like, I definitely, I think I tried too many MMOs that didn't hit on the right mechanics that I enjoy. Yeah. I think I started like, I never did WoW because I was infinitely scared. I was like, this is like one of those things that you start and you never stop, so I'm just gonna not start. So I just never did. There you go.
WoW. Yeah, the best way to win the game is to never play it, right? It's just to not play it.
I think so. I think I did it. I think I won that game.
You beat the World of Warcraft.
And then I think I tried ESO Online for a while, Elder Scrolls Online for a while, and that was one where I was like, wait, MMOs are just grinding the same mini quests over, and this is what MMOs are? And then I was like, why? And it wasn't the kind of like the grind that I like. However, I have discovered, for example, that Final Fantasy Online has fishing. That is fantastic.
It sure does.
And I just picked up New World, and similarly, the crafting and collecting, the simple foraging is the right kind of monotonous for me. Do you know what I mean? It's the right kind of like Zen monotonous.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Stardew Valley idea, except without a time limit. Because, you know, Stardew Valley, you have to like sleep. Weird.
Sleep? What the hell?
What is that? What is sleep?
Not realistic in life, not realistic in games.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't put false expectations in my video games, please. Game devs, take note. I'm very much the same way. Like I tried Final Fantasy for a hot second. But I didn't really fall into Final Fantasy too much. I have played Guild Wars 2 for eons. Nice. Which is kind of like, it has its own kind of weird complexities to it, but it's parsed down enough that like you don't have 17 hotbars you have to kind of constantly cycle through, anything like that. You have one, at max like two you like can swap through. It's got the same kind of like foraging, crafting, all that sort of fun stuff too. So and then I recently got back into Genshin Impact.
Oh, yep.
Which is it's like playing anime, and that's just nice to me. That's just a nice time. It's definitely got that grinding aspect too, of like, go hunt the thing in the same place you hunted a different thing yesterday. Okay, it's fine. I get a bunch of anime people, and it's okay.
I never even got to the good repetition of Genshin. Genshin is the game that most visually appealed to me. Do you know what I mean? I was like, this aesthetic and this look, the very colorful and like round and soft and fun. I was like, this is gonna be the one for me, right? And then I think I picked it up with the wrong kind of expectations. Like I picked it up specifically with a friend, like, we're gonna play this together, and then it turns out you can't do stuff with another person until like level 20 like, adventure class something blah blah blah. And that really threw me off. And so while I still love the look of Genshin, and I think it is very nice, it's not one I have fallen into enough yet. Although I have seen there is a magical teapot, and that might...
There is a magical teapot. I have yet to find the magical teapot, but my siblings keep telling me about a magical teapot. And it took me a long time to realize, yes, they were literally talking about, like, a magical, like, TARDIS-like teapot.
Yeah.
That you can just
like
chill in. It's your house, but it's a teapot.
So wild.
What... So you talked about indie games that you play a lot. What has been, and I'm sure you've played a bajillion and a half of them, but at least recently, what's been one that's really surprised you with like an aspect of it, whether it's the story, whether it's the visualizations, whether it's like a ton of things all combined, the music, anything like that. What's one that really sticks out to you? That you definitely think more people should check out?
That's so hard. I'm not sure. But like, I think like this is going back a little bit. One that like always sticks out in my mind, and it's not that recent, it's from last year, but they have new content, and I'm waiting for them because they've been doing that thing where they release in like stages. You know what I mean? They're like, this quarter we're releasing this and this. And so I want to get back to it, but only once they've released everything.
I understand that, yeah.
And that game is Spiritfarer, which is so phenomenal and is so moving. And I think is one of the games, I think it is I don't think this is up for question. I think it is the game where I've cried on stream the most, like just openly wept. Because in case you don't know, Spiritfarer is about ferrying spirits to the other side, and so you have to connect with characters, and you have to help them to unravel their own stories. And then once you have brought them into your heart, you have to let them go, and it's really it's I mean, it's so beautiful, and it is like bringing it down to simplistics, and not fighting with words on this. It's about death. Like it is a game about death, and but it is so beautifully done, and it is so like, here is a journey. You know what I mean? And it's okay to get to the end of that journey. And like, and everyone's journey is going to be different. And I so resonated with that.
Yeah. I knew of Spiritfarer. I technically own it and have dabbled in it for like 10 minutes, and very late at night when I was very tired and I was like, this is so soothing, and absolutely fell asleep. The music alone, the music and the visuals alone, without like knowing, the full scope of what the game is going to entail, is gorgeous. Yeah. It's stunning. It's very, very beautiful. It's so peaceful.
Yeah, it is.
Which, like, on that, the topic that it is covering, I think a lot of people view, death and passing on and everything as something that's kind of scary. Sometimes it's scary to say goodbye to things, especially like if they're things that you really, really care about and love, or people or anything like that. So to have it be in this space that is so calm and serene and welcoming, and I imagine that there are moments in it that are less of that. But
yeah, like I said, everyone's journey is different. There are some that are very calm the whole way through. There are some that take a journey and they have one or two challenges, and but it's very reasonable, and you're like, okay. There are some that it's like such a fight, or there's some that take a turn you don't expect, or there are some where, I don't know, I personally couldn't think about it too hard, like where I was, where you're like, this person is in this wild situation, and like that is so rough to do. And I think it is still like, it is a nice view on a tough thing. It is a journey that always comes to an end. And but the journey can still be this beautiful thing. The connections can still be these wonderful things. The time you have can still be so lovely. And I think it's just a nice take compared to like a lot of grimdark stuff, which is fine. Yeah. You know what I mean? Every story has merit.
Yeah.
But you do see a lot of like very grimdark. You do see a lot of very like like dark doom, gloom. You see a lot of like
spooky Grim Reaper.
Yeah,
kind of
like
coming
that.
to take you away from everything, instead of like being, a harbinger of something more, more final. Yes, but finality isn't like you said. Something ending doesn't mean that it's a bad thing.
Yeah, and and exactly like you said. Instead of like very, very often, let's be real here. Very often, death is shown as a skeleton or a dead body with a huge weapon they wield.
Very spooky.
In dark clothing.
Yeah.
And in this, the Grim Reaper equivalent is a little girl and her cat.
Yeah.
Like that is speaking of. They heard. They knew.
They knew.
It is me. I am Sweet Darkness. Come to tell you.
I've come to tell you. Well, wants to talk to you about your extended car's warranty. The juxtaposition between how the majority of society, at least in Western society, like the North American cultures, view death, like you said, as like this imposing, scary, thing. And then seeing it in the light of the game, which again kind of like puts it into this perspective of, I mean, death is an end. It is the end to something. But it doesn't have to be something that is oppressive and scary and, whisking you away, or pulling someone away, someone away from something else. And it is a journey. Yeah. Like it sounds, it's so sweet. So
it is. It's a really good game. And like you said, the simple animations, one of the simplest mechanics in the game is hugging. One of the simplest things you can do to connect with the people on their journeys is you can give them a hug. And one of the most beautiful things in the game is not only can you hug people, and you literally take this moment and you both sigh and take this moment to connect. But should that person not want a hug, they will tell you, no, thank you. And you respect that boundary. Like,
I love that.
It's such a simple, nice, like, and like you said, the music, like there's a lot of very small but thoughtful things put into it. The music that plays, it has a lot of feeling to it that is so appropriate to the story. It is so rich. It gathers and it swells when it makes sense. There are moments when you yourself can like stop and take a moment and just play music for your plants. I
would like to play music for my plants.
Yeah, it's honestly like it's a game that I don't know if I don't know because in my community I've shouted about it enough. I feel like that people have all at least heard about it. I don't know how many people are out there playing it, but if you haven't heard of this game, Spiritfarer,
play it. Do it.
Yeah, highly recommend. I mean, you know what? And here's the thing, though. Do you know what the content is?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And do keep in mind that like, hey, it's okay to like this game and enjoy the mechanics of the farming and the building, and then not to want to deal with the story of death in that time. That's cool. You can put that on hold for a bit and like do the other stuff. Like that's valid too. To put that game on hold if you need to, 100%. But if you have the space and the room for it, it's such a good game.
To kind of shift focus a little bit, because you talked about that the hugging mechanic in this game, and that implies consent, and a big thing that you and I both do in various capacities is we are both either producers, storytellers, gamekeepers, story weavers, whatever you want to call them, for tabletop RPGs and other sorts of online or other storytelling mediums. At the very least, we're both incredible fans of storytelling and TTRPGs and things of that nature. And I think one of the big things that I appreciate, I don't think it's not new, but it's definitely getting a lot more recognition that it needs, is the concept of consent and safety in the TTRPG space. There's I know Monty Cook Games released a big safety checklist. There's the safety toolkit from
Kiana Shaw and Lauren Bryant Monk.
Yeah. There's a lot of good resources that have become popularized. They are concepts that have been around for a very long time in different circles. But I think that the more popularization, the more recognition of these safety tools in these spaces has only made these spaces better and 100%. Made the games that have been coming out even more impactful.
Oh, 100%. Let's talk about this. So, anyone out there poo-pooing safety tools, you're like, I don't know what your deal is, but like, I don't know if you're just not a good listen. I don't know if you're like not a good storyteller and you think you can't handle having things removed from your story. Like, having something not on the table doesn't take away from your story. In fact, it tells you where to steer it. Like, if anything, for example, especially like, I've used a lot of safety tools for horror games, and that lets you play into what kind of horror people do want. You know what I mean? So, like, for example, if you play a game like Bluebeard's Bride is known as a feminist horror game, and it has a lot of tough stuff in it. It has some like really like, let's just say like disgusting body horror, and I mean this in a good way, if that's something you want to engage with, like, then hell yeah, get your hands dirty in this like disgusting body horror. It has legitimate gender and sexuality issues. It has you know, darkness within like how you know, your role in society might affect you, the church, the state. You can get so deep and grimy into these like tough situations, and using safety tools helps that, because it lets you know, like where not to go and where to go, and like where the good stuff that, you know, you and your friends, your players, or whatnot, where they want to go to be scared. Like, you know, what content they do want to engage with, what's gonna like scare them in like the right way, that they're gonna remember this, like not in the terrible way where they're gonna remember it and be like, that was the freaking worst, that sucked. You know, it was no fun. Why would you want that? Why would you? It's a game, it's for having fun. So engage with your content in a good, fun way.
Yeah, I think the game that sprang to mind for me, when, you know, we're talking about TTRPGs and safety tools, and specifically like kind of indie TTRPGs, is Alice is Missing by Spencer Stark. Spencer, I have shouted to every mountaintop and to every sky possible how amazing Alice is Missing is. And a lot of it is because of the time that Spencer takes in the game guide to go over, hey, this game goes over some really, really heavy topics. Like really heavy topics. So make sure, like, it's kind of a requirement that you talk to your players about, this is what is in the game. These are how we make our boundaries, like our lines and veils, if anyone is familiar with those. And these are what we won't, this is what we aren't going to talk about. We're not going to talk about these in conversations. But after that is when you start building your characters, is when you start fleshing out the world with all of these parameters already established. So you start with a clean slate, you build up the sandbox, you know, parameters, and then you just go, because you know where to build, you know? And I've had some of my most impactful games playing, you know, specifically Alice is Missing, but other games as well, because I knew if I was running the game, I knew where my players, where I could hit them at an emotional level that is impactful to them, while also remaining, you know, safe. Because like to tap back into that horror aspect, horror movies and horror in general, there is a level of consent there to it. You know, you are going to, like, say a haunted house attraction. We'll go with that instead of like actual horror movies. A haunted house attraction. If you're going to a haunted house attraction, odds are good, you know, that you are going to get yelled at. You're going to get, like, a lot of times they tell you, you know, there's going to be flashing lights. There's going to be, you know, in some situations that are very specific, people might, like, you know, touch you, but, you know, you have to consent to that and all that sort of stuff. But you know what you're getting into. Why not have that in your games where you're improvising literally everything?
Yeah.
You know? And I again will say it is only made, once I started actively engaging with safety tools in the games that I play, I think it's only made me a stronger game, like, storyteller, stronger game master, or whatever you want to call it, and player. Because like it really forces you to, like, think about things. God's forbid we have to think about things, but it really makes you like pick good, you know, the good, but like meaningful stories as opposed to just kind of saying whatever's on, you know, the top of your head.
Yeah. And you can use safety tools to specifically say, torment me with this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because there are a lot of times and a lot of folks where when you're playing a role-playing game, you're like, oh, I want to put my character through the ringer. Like, I just want them curled up in a ball by the end of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And safety tools lets you do that, where it lets you like kind of zoom in on like what's going to be good, what's not going to be good, remove the stuff that's not going to be good, because once again, you want to tell a good story, you want to have fun. Everyone is there to have a good time. And so you want to, like, if that's what you want to do, you can preset it up so you make sure you traumatize your character and not the player.
It's always have you had you specifically, have you had games where you've either run them or played them that you want to like give an example of like a moment where that was like an impactful thing that you still remember?
Trying to think of like one. There's a lot of games where like I end up remembering the general vibe of it, where I'm like, wow, I can't believe we kind of like took it here or did this sort of thing. One game that I love for its mechanics and storytelling elements and the way that you have to kind of, as we've been talking about with safety tools, where you kind of have to preset your boundaries, you kind of have to preset your like sandbox, like you described. A game where you can just like go wild with the mechanics once you've set it up is Starcrossed. And I will never stop trying to convince people of the value of Starcrossed as a game that really helps you learn to, you know, question the limitations of what a role-playing game is. It's so completely different from the type of games that most people start with. In the role-playing game world. It's so far outside of that I think it really helps people knock down walls in terms of, you know, what they think role-playing games have to be.
Yes. Yeah, Starcrossed is, I have played it a couple of times, and for those who don't know what Starcrossed is, one, you absolutely should check it out. It is exceptionally good. But it is a 2-player TTRPG where you have a wooden block tower, much like you do in the game Jenga.
And some people might know the TTRPG Dread, which uses a similar wooden block tower mechanic.
Yeah. Except in this one, you're not necessarily trying to fend off some scary, very scary thing. You're playing as
love.
Well,
you're trying to fend off love.
Because you're playing as two individuals or entities or two concepts that want to be together but cannot for some reason. So it could be something as literal as like a royal and their you know night guard. It could be, I saw someone did it where there were two trees separated by a fence. It was you. It was you. Amazing.
It was literally me and Lauren Bryant Monk, the creator of the one of the facilitators of the TTRPG toolkit. And that's why I love so much that you pointed out, like, this is a first step to, I think, anyone that hasn't stepped outside the zone of, like, you know, the biggest name TTRPGs. The idea that you said you can be a character, a creature, or a concept, I think is what a lot of people, you know, need to like hear, and then like it might blow your mind a little bit. But yeah, you don't have to only be humanoids. You can play on literally like the concept of something. And so myself and Lauren, one of my all-time favorite games, played as two trees, one a like pristine landscaped, you know, in a personalized garden sort of tree, and then the other one kind of a wild, like out in a park nearby, split between by like a fence. And we slowly played through the seasons, and eventually our trees, you know, they started, you know, with touching by bringing their roots together and intertwining their roots first. So this is a game where I think a lot of people look at it and you're like, oh, this has to be a smooch fest. It doesn't have to.
It's just the connection.
Yeah, exactly. You can absolutely go down and dirty in this game if you want to, but you could also literally be two trees who fall in love and end up growing together through a fence.
Oh, my heart. As you were talking about that, I just had a vision in my head of what if you played as a rocky cliffside and the ocean.
I've done.
Have you?
No. I haven't done that one. I did. With my best friend. My best friend is a geologist. And I have a degree in horticulture.
Amazing.
So we were like, what if we were literally the entities of a volcanic island where they represented kind of the geological growth and volcanic evolution of the island, and I was the plant life as it started to evolve on this island.
I can't. Oh my gosh, my little heart. It's those sorts of stories, like you can have exceptionally poignant moments in, you know, a big name TTRPG. Like I had a very good moment with a good friend of mine playing the Dungeons and the Dragons. You can have great moments, but consider the idea of having one of those exceptionally like heartfelt moments with something that isn't like you. Like, I just want to be a tree now. Yeah. I just want to be a tree.
Oh God. Yeah.
On an island somewhere.
Yeah. No, so, and like what you're saying, and I think this is the thing. I never want someone, I have a lot of friends who their favorite game is still D&D. I'm over here the nerd that's like, give me every game that's not D&D, but I'm not decreasing the value. I'm not out here to tell you that D&D sucks. Right. I'm just telling you that I love exploring the kinds of stories you can tell with other games. And actually, something I recommend all the time, pretty much constantly, is to try a game like this. Like, for example, Starcrossed is a game you play in one sitting. Like it is, when that tower topples, your story is done. Like that's the entirety of the story. Take your D&D characters and play them in Starcrossed or For the Queen or like any kind of, you know, one of these games that you can play in one sitting, and it forces you to think of, you know, your characters, the world in a different way, engage with that, and then come back to your D&D game and see how differently you view it, or what new things you hadn't thought of before for your characters. There are games like this that are specifically perfect for either doing a side quest of your characters, or even setting up the story of the world, or you know, finding out some of your character's backstory. If you're the kind of person who you're like, oh, I love playing D&D, but I don't know who my character is until I play them, that's valid. I get that. Play another game and find out who you are.
Yeah, I am a huge supporter of all of that. Absolutely all of that. And I think too, playing other kinds of games, other kinds of TTRPGs has also made me a better D&D player. 100%. So it goes the same way too. Like, playing more games doesn't make the games less fun. It in fact makes all of the games more fun, because you can take little bits and pieces and aspects that you learn from a different game or a different system, and you can bring them back to, like, you know, your normal, every
regular
day. Yeah, your
campaign.
regular campaign or whatever games that you find that you play the most. Maybe you like the idea of like the clocks mechanic from Forged in the Dark.
What I was gonna say.
Same hats.
Same brain. Listen, that's
very
a good one to rip off.
Yeah. Get those clocks powered by the apocalypse with their playbooks.
Yep.
And having each playbook have different kinds of skill sets that they're good at, and you can still learn from different from different playbooks and everything like that.
Yeah,
all sorts of fantastic things. Or like if you want to take the concept of a roll under system, because D&D specifically, and other games very similar to it, you want to try to hit your number or higher whenever you roll, like mechanically speaking. There's some games where you don't. You want to make sure that you roll under whatever your thing is, which is it's a similar concept, but a lot of people just don't realize that, it's the same thing, but just flip-flopped.
Yeah.
They're all games. They're all good. Give them a go. Give them a touch.
Yeah, 100%.
Touch the game.
And exactly like you said, like, go try other games. Discover something about, yourself, your character, your role play, your storytelling. Find some mechanics you like. Bring it back into these games. I 100% was going to say the clocks too. I love that. Or like if you're a GM, like pull like GM intrusions from a different game and be like, you know what? At this moment, you can say no to this. But if you like, I can offer you a GM intrusion here and you will get this reward for doing it. You know what I mean? I will give you advantage on your next roll, but a bad thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you want that exchange?
Yeah. And again, like it's that mechanic is in a handful of different kinds of systems, but that specific mechanic of GM intrusions, or I know Blades in the Dark calls them Devil's Bargains, or things of that nature, where the person running the game gives the player an option of something, it's an intrusion, so it's going to be like a conflict, a choice, potentially worse outcome. You get a reward for it. But again, it kind of cycles back to you're asking as the person who is running the game for consent from your players. You're asking consent. And as a player,
and it's fun.
It's so fun. As a player, I myself, if you say, all right, can I intrude here?
Yeah.
I will 99.9% of the time say, absolutely, please. Please make please make my character's life just a little bit more challenging. Please 100%. Give me something to react to. Because I've discovered that I am the player who pushes every button. If you put a row of buttons in front of me and say, all right, don't push any of them, I will sit here and I will say, okay, and then just keep looking at you for the and now go. And then I'll push all of them out at the same time.
100%.
But like things like GM intrusions, where it's like, here's a fresh, shiny new button for you. You can push it if you want. If you don't want it right now, we'll just put it away for later, you know? And sometimes just pushing the button, making the thing happen, choosing the more challenging outcome is more satisfying and fulfilling than having I'm not going to say a nice time or a safe time, because sometimes that's not the case. Yeah. But introducing new conflicts, introducing new and more things that are going to challenge you as a player as well as a character can lead for that more nuanced play. That deeper connection to your character, to the game, to each other as players.
100%.
Especially if you can connect with another player in this situation.
Yep.
It's so good. I'm so glad you brought up GM intrusions. They're so good. They're so incredibly good.
And I think they're a really good example. Like you mentioned, they're a really good example of hey y'all, consent can be fun and sexy.
It can be so sexy.
Do you have any idea how you're playing it, you're asking someone if you can do this thing to them, and it's safe because they can 100% say no, and you better as heck have the kind of table where people can say no, firstly. But we're assuming you do. And you know, you're saying like, you can 100% say no to this, but here's this fun bad thing.
Here's this really cool bad thing that I could introduce you to. But also here's a good thing that will come out of it for you too.
Yeah, exactly. It's so fun. It's so shiny. It's such a cool exchange. Like, and it's safe.
It's
like,
safe.
If you have any, you know, qualms with safety tools, and you're like, oh, that's gonna only burden our story, that's not true. It lets you, exactly as you described, you can either, you know, navigate, as we've described, like around the bigger issues so that you can get to the stuff you want to deal with, or it lets you deal with those traumas safely. You know what I mean? Because like role play can be extremely therapeutic.
Absolutely. There's literally, there is like role play, there's actual 100%. Literal role play therapy. Like you can study it and become like a therapist who specifically, you know, focuses on stuff like this, you know, being a character, talking through a situation as a character, to have that little bit of, there's a mild disconnect, but not quite. Like I don't know about you personally. I've realized in reflection of like long-term characters, how much I actually do put myself in these characters. Because one of them, like this one here, their name is Kay Belton. They are the first non-binary character I ever played. Because I was like, I'm going to play someone who's definitely different from me in every single way possible. And then lo and behold, through this character, I realized, one, do I have a lot of baggage? Two, did I actually make a character that was different from me? And that kind of led me to like, maybe I don't have to restrict myself as much as I thought. Maybe I'm free to be myself in these spaces, you know, and that helped me realize that, you know, I was a lot more queer than I thought I was. I was definitely a lot less binary than I thought I was. It's so interesting, the things that you can kind of parse out and discover about yourself through characters, and even in hindsight.
100%. Yeah. Nice. No, absolutely. I think there's a lot of people who have told stories of, you know, how they were able to discover so much about themselves, whether that is, you know, things about their gender discoveries, sexuality discoveries, just personality quirks they didn't realize they had, like all these sorts of things, stepping outside of yourself. And then being, I'm not me, I'm this person right now. So whatever they do is separate of me. And then observing yourself being another person is wild. But also, like you said, it is literally used for therapy. It is literally used for, you know, teaching communication skills. One of the first long-term Dungeons and Dragons campaigns I ever ran was for a set of 3 kids. And I think they were like 6, 8, and 11 at the time. And by the time we finished it, like we played for about 2 years. So I got to watch them learn and discover through their characters and through D&D. And it was wild because when you're dealing with kids, especially like that young, the 6-year-old, for example, I swear to God, I watched things click in his head on several occasions where he had to learn. We weren't playing too heavily into, you know, the good, the bad, neutral, lawful, that sort of stuff. But he did start being like, oh, this is make-believe. I can do anything I want. And he started to be mean to his siblings. In the game. So this is something where I thought I, as the GM, was gonna have to step in and like correct this action when the youngest one was like, I'm stealing this from you, I'm hitting you with my weapon, like blah blah blah, right? And I didn't have to do anything because the siblings were like, if your character does this, our characters will not adventure with him And this little kid went like, click, like, oh, so I can do anything, but things will happen because of my decisions.
Oh my goodness. Cause and effect. Consequences.
It was unbelievable to watch happen.
I love it. I love it. I feel like there's some big kid players that need to learn that too.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. That's something that's on like a bucket list of things for me to do eventually, is run a TTRPG for young folk.
You will never see such creative use of spells, of items, of character abilities as you will from children. Mm-hmm. Because they will question all limitation.
Absolutely.
And not in a crappy way. Like not in a like, I'm gonna outwit my GM. This is me being like better than you. It's not that, right? Mm-hmm. It's genuine curiosity and creativity. The sky is literally
there is no upper limit. There's no limitations to what they think is capable, which is unlike a lot of individuals who get into D&D at like a later age.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a learning curve to break down those walls that you built up from being told you got to be an adult now. It's time to stop playing. You break those down to the point where like I would question anyone who's played a TTRPG who hasn't had that moment of I can do anything.
Yeah.
I can do anything.
Wait, I can do literally anything right now, right?
Yeah. And that moment, I had the absolute privilege to have 2 brand new players at my table starting last year. And we've been doing a home campaign for about a year-ish now. And seeing them go from literally knowing nothing about TTRPGs, anything like that, to having those moments of, oh, I can just go. And then having that transition into this incredible RP. I had a Twitter thread about it early in October of this moment, this session that I had where one of my best friends is also in this game, and his character was trying to save the city that he was a part of. He was like basically like a Robin Hood-esque, underground thing going on, and one of his closest members betrayed him and was going to turn, and he had to confront them. And this whole big onslaught of events, and the rest of the party was doing something else, tangentially, and we were cutting back and forth, and it was exceptionally cinematic. And they got to have a moment of heartbreak and betrayal and closure, and have NPCs talk to them through this situation of, it sometimes people are just bad people, and it's not your fault for leaving, and it's not your fault that they chose to do this, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And they reached out to me later and said, I was going through some really personal shit, and I didn't realize how much I was processing stuff until this moment, during that moment. And as someone who runs games, that's like, I never expect that. But to hear that they were able to come away from this experience being a brand new player compared to a lot of people who've been in the general TTRPG industry for a very long time, being a new player and having the opportunity to have such a meaningful moment, to me, is worth everything. Like, I will never be able to top that. I'll never be able to top that moment of being the facilitator of such a meaningful moment. Is there's no words for it. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. There's nothing close. There's nothing in comparison to that kind of feeling.
Even just introducing people to games where they get to explore those stories that mean stuff like that to them, and they get to like do similar things where they get to explore something or say something or do something that they needed to do and they didn't even realize. Like
Yeah, the big deep sigh of like you let something go, and as other players you get to also be there in that space, because even though like their character was going through it by themselves, we were all at the table together, but everyone else was helping, different situations, but we were all there in the same space feeling the same emotions. And I talked to them afterwards about like, it's so hard to tell people about these moments from like an outside perspective, because like you're missing something from it. It's so very good.
It can be very hard to explain if you've never had that kind of realization experience, like, such fulfilling storytelling. Like it's wild. Like it's
yeah, it's very, very cool. Long and short, folks, consent is sexy. Safety tools are gonna make you better storytellers.
Yeah.
Play more games.
Play more games.
Play more games.
And then smash them together.
Yeah.
Like
just do like a Play-Doh, Play-Doh sandwich of all your games. Yeah.
I have a long-term game, and we're on a bit of a hiatus right now, but a group of friends who's been playing for like literally years. We only play when we were playing constantly, we were only playing once every 2 or 3 months. So we'd only get together once every 2 or 3 months, and then we play a game. We literally never once played the same type of game 2 games in a row.
Wow.
So every single time we played something not completely different, because we started with a Monster of the Week game. So we started with a Monster of the Week, and that was supposed to be a one-shot. And then this story and these characters meant so much to us, they were like, what if we played this again and these same characters, but with this system, and it's several years later, because we literally started them as children. We played a Monster of the Week game kind of in the style of like, What's New Scooby-Doo? Like, I can't remember, like a very young little silly mystery where you think everything's a ghost, but it turns out to be a sheep, on the line type story. So we literally were like little children solving mysteries, and then we went on to play, I believe we went on to play BFFs, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's a game where you play as children and is entirely GM-less, and it is entirely improvisational, and you play by taking characters onto different places on this map, and then the different locations on the map have different mechanics. So literally you can take them to the mall, and then the mall has like, once you've spent all your money, you have to leave the mall. Or like, it's really cute and really wholesome, but also has like really amazing mechanics to it. So there's also like Grandma's Farm, and on Grandma's Farm there's like the mysterious lightning tree, and like anyway, so this type of game really makes you kind of like take your characters all over the place and do a bunch of stuff with them. And then we went back, and we were a few years older, and we did more Monster of the Week, and then we went back and we did like For the Queen, and then we went back and we did Monster of the Week, then we went back and we did one of my games, Our Lady, and then we literally went back and forth, so that every time we played something different. And we aged them up, and we had them go on different kinds of adventures, and we told different kinds of stories every time. And so every time we played with them, we had to stop and think, how does this mechanic that was so important last session gonna work in this story now? Like, gonna work in this game where there is no such mechanic.
Right, yeah.
And just playing anthology play like that for me is like such a fun way. You have to open up your mind, and you have to think about mechanics and what is core to them. And you have to think about like what elements of the story are valuable to you. And it's something I highly recommend. Like take your characters and throw them through a bunch of different stories. Throw them through the wash. Blend it all together.
It's gonna come out tasting good, whatever it is.
It's gonna be something amazing.
Yeah. The idea of doing an anthology type thing through different systems is so appealing to me. Like, that is so exciting. We kind of did that a little. Well, no, we didn't. We just swapped systems halfway through. But I mean, it's made for. It was for like a cyberpunk style game. And we decided to go with like a Powered by the Apocalypse system instead of the clunkier one that we were using, or rather the more numbers heavy one that we were using, because we all realized we are more narrative focused than number focused, and it's made for better gameplay. But to have, you know, a character that you have from this point and literally taking them through, you know, years of their life, it's over different games. That sounds so wonderful.
It's so much fun, and I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it has been a delight talking to you. I am so sad that it's not happened before, and I hope it happens again in the future, because you were an absolute delight.
No, you. How dare you? Uno reverso.
Reverse. We're all amazing.
Okay, fine.
But before we say toodaloo, Jess, where can folks find you around the internet?
The place you can find me most consistently is Twitter, because that is where, no matter what I am doing, I am unable to click away. That is where I talk about if I'm doing other stuff. So even if I am making stuff on other mediums, if I'm streaming, I shout about it on Twitter. If I made a new TikTok, I shout about it on Twitter. If I put up a new YouTube video, I shout about it on Twitter. So yeah, Twitter is my too long don't read for everything else. But yeah, you can come hang out with me over on Twitch, where I mostly play video games. Every once in a while we do some stuff. If you want to see the type of TTRPGs I have shown off, I have an entire collection on my YouTube, which I call Indie TTRPG Spotlight, where we were very regularly spotlighting different indie games. Every once in a while I was even lucky enough to either have, you know, game designers on, or I talked to them and bothered them a lot, and then they told me how best to play their games, and then I did it. Yeah, so I mean, depending on what you want to see from me, I'm all over the place.
And most places you're go_JG, right?
Yeah, I'm literally go_JG, the thing I was making fun of at the beginning because no one could pronounce it properly. And if you're wondering why such a weird sequence of words, it is literally my initials. My name is Go Jess, so you can either find me, Jess Go. You can find me as Go Jess, Jess Go, or Go JG, which is a mix of my last name and my initials. So it's all just, remember when we were talking about putting stuff in the blender? That's what I did with my usernames.
Amazing.
So they're all variations of my name.
They're all you, though. They're all just you. Thank you all for hanging out, for chilling with us during this very fun time. New episode next week. Chill out, hang out, and friends, until next time, enjoy your nightcap. Have a good night.